All right. I think we'll get started. I know there's probably a few more people joining as we get going, but I can do the intro a bit. So good morning all, and welcome to AVD Discussion Series Session 4, where we'll be talking about Nerdio automation. So very exciting. Before we get started, just a reminder that this is a recorded session, so we do like to record these, and then we can watch them back and share them with the people that can't make it in this time slot. And it is a discussion series, everybody, so please ask questions and butt in, and we certainly allow some time at the end. So as I mentioned, today is all about Nerdio automation. And we're very pleased to have Gerard from Nerdio on with us, so he'll be joining the conversation. Morning, Gerard. How are you going? Good.
Yeah, good, Paul. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, mate. It's good to have you here. And I might just do a little bit of a story about how we came to get involved with Nerdio, and then I'll hand over to George and Gerard, who will run the main session. Look, for AVD, at CubeSys, we've done over 40 projects now in the last sort of 18 months or so, AVD, helping all sorts of different organizations and sizes and shapes make use of the technology. And in the early days, when we first got involved with that, when the pandemic hit, we were doing quite a lot of the automation ourselves using Azure automation. And we have a DevOps practice internally, and we do quite a lot of that stuff for the Azure platform, and obviously started to do that with AVD. And then we got introduced to Nerdio, and we had a demo, and Vadim, who is the CEO at Nerdio, actually came on and did the demo with us. And Vadim is awesome at that, as we've learned since, and does lots of demos for us. And what we saw during that time was that we were basically wasting our time trying to do automation outside of Nerdio and trying to replicate that with the Microsoft platform. So what Nerdio does, as you'll see today, is provide a awesome set of tools to automate deploying VMs and bringing them back in, and lots of wonderful settings in there that the boys will talk about. But also it helps us manage the image. So from an IT perspective, it really does sort of lift the AVD Azure platform from what I would say is an adequate platform to an enterprise grade platform where we can do lots of wonderful automation things. And I love stories that we hear of our clients of things like grabbing a new image from the marketplace, and then deploying your apps automatically on it, and then rolling it through the host pools, through validation and then into production. And all of that can happen. So with us watching from the background and just approving the steps along the way, so you can automate a tremendous amount. There's auto heal and all sorts of great insights that Nerdio provides into the AVD platform. And like I said, I think it really does lift the bar for AVD and brings it on par with Citrix and VMware. Right? So with that, I might get out of the way and pass over to George and Gerard, who will run the main session. Hope you enjoy. And like I said, please ask questions. It is a discussion series.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for coming, everyone. I might just turn my camera off because my computer goes a little bit slow when I'm trying to present. But welcome to the Nerdio for Manager Enterprise Edition of this AVD session that we're running. So as Paul already explained, Nerdio sort of does a lot of automation and smarts in the background to help a lot of customers that are using AVD, sort of native AVD, to help automate a lot of their tasks and images and things like that. I know that there's already a couple of people on the call that are using Nerdio, but I mean, is there anyone here that's sort of not using Nerdio or is unfamiliar with what Nerdio is or what it has to offer?
Sorry. I'm just saying, we don't use Nerdio for the MRI, so we're here and learning as students.
Yeah, cool, awesome. No, it's good to have you guys on board. So it's probably a really good session for you to understand and see where Nerdio fits in the environment, and see sort of some of the additional advanced features that it has to offer if you're using, Azure native to do AVD, and what Nerdio can offer you if you were to go down this path. So just to dive right into it. So what is Nerdio? Nerdio is basically an overlay that overlays on top of your existing AVD environment to provide you with things like advanced auto scaling, dashboards, cost savings, image management, deployment, all of those sort of things that are traditionally involved when building a sort of an SOE, a host pool, doing any patching, that kind of stuff. It sort of helps and gives you all the tool sets and all the actions that you need to be able to do that fairly easily. So Nerdio is a standalone Azure application that you can deploy from the Azure Marketplace. And there's really just step-by-step instructions, like it's like a next install, and it sort of walks you through the whole process of installing Nerdio in your environment. Think of it like a Citrix / sort of like VMware control plane that helps Azure native AVD sort of exceed beyond what Microsoft's got to offer. So how is it deployed? So again, from the Azure Marketplace, it actually goes ahead and installs all of the stuff on the left-hand side here. So you got your app service, your Key Vault, Azure SQL, Log Analytics, Apps Insights, all of that stuff in your own tenant, typically deployed to like a new resource group. From there, once you've got it deployed, there's like a web portal that you go to, and you basically register Nerdio against a VNet. Subnet, you enter domain join credentials, all of that stuff, so that it's like a quick setup guide. You can then link that to your different subscriptions. You've got different deployment options, so you can do like multi-tenant, you can do multiple subscriptions. We've actually got a customer that has got a single Azure AD tenant, and we have 6 or 7 different Nerdio environments deployed in that Azure AD tenant, which then talk to separate subscriptions below. So there's a lot of different deployment options that are on offer for deploying Nerdio. But basically, they're the things that get deployed in your environment on the left-hand side there. And then down the bottom, you've got the Nerdio licensing service, which literally sort of phones home and lets Nerdio know how many users are using Nerdio so that they can then bill appropriately. But Nerdio does not have any access to your environment. The entire deployment for Nerdio lives inside your Azure subscription. You've got full ownership, full control of it. You can lock it down if you want to. It's completely up to you, but you own, manage, and maintain that Nerdio environment. I just wanted to run through, I guess, a slide on how little AVD native is or can do versus what Nerdio Manager for Enterprise has got. So real quick, easy snapshot to see the differences between Azure Native and Nerdio. So, both of them support VM Start on Connect. Both of them can ramp up hosts on a schedule, drain session hosts, and scale based on available sessions. But that's pretty much where Azure Native sort of stops. That's pretty much all it's got to offer you. All the other things, and this is where Nerdio comes into play. So if you've got special use cases for like, pre-staging schedules, adjusting how aggressive you want your VMs to scale back in after hours, during hours, sort of auto healing any host that may be broken, right? So there might be a couple of VMs that are not phoning home back to the AVD PaaS service for whatever reason. Nerdio can detect that and reboot VMs and all of that stuff. So it's really, really good to use in a large environment if you don't have any other existing smarts or automation there. Nerdio pretty much pays for itself, right? If you're doing automation in your own subscription, you can probably see how time consuming it is to go ahead and try and script some of this stuff. You're not wasting hours with Nerdio. It's already there. Like, they've got a lot of scripted actions that you can sort of just tie in and be able to deploy things as needed. And I'll go into that in some of the demos when we get to them a little bit later on. But it pretty much pays for itself when it comes to that. It's primary cost and performance, optimizations. It's a consumption-based model, so pay as you go based on your monthly active users. You've got no lock-in contracts. It supports all of the new upcoming sort of, desktop services that Azure's got to offer. So like things like Windows 365, it can support that as well and manage and maintain those environments if that's something you're interested in. But it's got a lot of advanced stuff, and it can do your storage as well, right? So in the past, we've seen customers that are sort of hitting limits in terms of IOPS and throughput for the storage accounts, where they might be storing their FSLogix profiles. Typically in Azure, the bigger the storage account that you have, the more IOPS you get. Nerdio can automate some of that stuff and ramp up I guess the storage itself so that it gives you more throughput, for things like login storms and that. But I'll get into that a little bit later during the demo. Again, so if we look at this slide here, at the very top, we've got the sort of native AVD components. So you've got your PaaS gateway brokers, you've got your remote desktop clients and sort of the admin experience there, the Azure portal. this is where Nerdio comes into play. So Nerdio essentially, it doesn't really replace the admin portal, I mean, but if you've got Nerdio deployed, you will be using the Nerdio control plane or I guess the instance that's deployed in your environment to manage AVD environments moving forward. You can still go back and manage from the Azure portal, but you lose some of the automation and smarts if you were to do that. You can also, if you're not happy with it, you can essentially, remove it, or if Nerdio was to go down, if that region was to go down for whatever reason, or, the database gets corrupt, etc., you do not actually lose your AVD session host. They will still run via the native platform, but you will be managing via the Nerdio sort of side of things. So just to dive into some of these key features that Nerdio has got to offer. Things like user session management. So there's a dashboard inside Nerdio where we can see which users are logged into where, sort of at a simple glance, like a single pane of glass, to be able to see who's logged into where. We can log users off straight from the web GUI. We can send messages. We can see who's gone where, how long they're logged in, that kind of thing. We've also got things like the storage, FS Logic storage and deployment / management. Again, with this kind of stuff, you no longer have to use group policy, sort of on-prem group policy, to manage FS Logic storage profiles. You can use Nerdio. It's got an integration in there where you can select, a different FS Logic storage account or group based on what host pool you're deploying to, straight from Nerdio's portal. It's also got proactive monitoring, so things like any VMs that sort of are running but they're not phoning home to the AVD service, it can detect that and throw alerts. It can send you notifications. It can basically rebuild that VM if needed, or reboot it, whatever you want to do. It's got a lot of that automation. And also, if you're doing any sort of MSIX packaging, app delivery stuff, Nerdio now includes actions and scripts and things like that for you to be able to upload your VHDX files straight into Nerdio, along with any certificates, and then tie certificates to certain host pools or certain applications, and then have, like self-signed certificates sort of be automatically deployed to all of your session hosts, so that when you do launch an MSI X application app attach an application to your session host, that certificate's already there, and that way it will launch for the user. So a lot of cool stuff there. Moving on, so the storage auto scaling stuff, I already spoke about that. It's again, sizing up your storage or increasing the quota to essentially give you more IOPS and throughput, so that you don't get any issues with your users trying to log in. There's no slow performance or anything like that. So again, login storms, boot storms, that kind of thing, that's where that helps. The cost and performance advice, this is a great one here. A lot of people look at Nerdio for costing and performance advice. So some of the features that it's got to offer is, when you deploy Nerdio and you assign a host pool and let Nerdio manage it, after about a week or so, we get some insights around, how many VMs are running 24/7, how many users are logging in, that kind of stuff. And it can actually provide you some, info on how many reserved instances you should probably purchase to bring the costs down for your overall environment. It gives really good monitoring, metrics, alerting, all of that stuff, which is built into the product again. Moving on, it's got internal RBAC roles. So if you want to give, someone a read-only access to the environment, you can do that. If you want to give someone a help desk role where they can basically go in and view user sessions and shadow user sessions, you can do that as well. It's also got like a desktop SOE admin role where they've only got access to go in there and basically manage and maintain desktop images. The other thing as well is there's an end user self-service portal. So if you're using things like VM Start on Connect or Power on Connect, there's also a separate sort of RBAC role that you can assign to your users and have them manually start and stop the VM as well, if that's something you're interested in. So you might have some DevOps workers or some sort of high-end GPU users that need to start and stop the VM. So rather than giving them access to the Azure portal, they can do it from the Nerdio portal themselves. Which is great. And then the last one, I guess that good one to cover, is desktop image versioning. So if you're using things like the shared image gallery or the Azure Compute Gallery, I think it's been renamed now. you can have Nerdio, create backups and version history. So if you do roll out a new, I guess, an update to your image and you find it's broken, whatever, you can easily roll back. Whereas if you do that into the Azure native portal, it's a real big pain. You need to go in there. You need to, make sure you've got a snapshot of the disk, make sure you've captured the disk correctly. And when you want to revert back, it's a real pain to do that. So Nerdio makes it a lot easier for you. Any questions on any of that stuff before I move on? Cool. This is what Nerdio looks like. So I've deployed this. This is actually a snapshot of a customer's environment, just some of the, I guess, the dashboard information that it gives you. So we can see their highest name users, high current users, monthly active users, that kind of thing. And then over on the right-hand side, it tells us how many host pools we've got, the number of hosts that we're using, how many cores, that kind of thing. But one of the great things here that we can see is all the auto scaling savings and I guess an overall glance of what our environment looks like. So on the left-hand side, we can see that with whatever scalings and auto scalings and storage scalings that customers are using, we can see that we're saving, almost 50% just by using Nerdio. So Nerdio is essentially paying itself off. It's helping us bring down those costs with some of the advanced tools that it's got internally built into the platform. So if we wanted to see, concurrent user cost per month, it tells us right there, based on the number of users that have logged in, it's on average costing us around $42 a month, based on a concurrence cost. Otherwise, monthly active user cost will be $16. So depending on what licensing model you've sort of set yourself up at, it can give you a really good glance around sort of where you're saving some things. On the next page here, we've got sort of our workspace or our where our host pools are. So in this particular example here, we can see, I've got a whole bunch of host pools there. There's about 10 of them. We're looking at dynamic host pools here. On the left-hand side here, we can see we're sort of logged into the workspace. And now we've got a dynamic host pool, which is hosts that are scaled up and down automatically based on schedules that we set, and I'll show you guys that in the demo. But then we've also got static host pools. So think about like traditional persistent VMs where, we sort of build the VM and then we use like SCCM or something else to go ahead and patch it. Whereas a dynamic host pool is always going to be built off a gold image. So think of those like non-persistent sort of VMware Horizon, linked clones, that kind of scenario. So that's where that can help a lot. And then zooming in a little bit, we can get at a quick glance sort of some of the snapshots around what's happening for each host pool without having to drill in to each environment and sort of see what's going on. So here for this particular example, that middle line item there, we can see, it's currently set to 12 users per VM. We've got one host on of a total of 4 hosts. This is our scaling logic, so we can see we're scaling here based on CPU usage. So the traditional Azure native only allows you to scale based on number of users per host, whereas with Nerdio, we can choose CPU, we can choose RAM, we can choose number of spare sessions to keep available. There's all these different options, but in this particular example, we're basing it based on CPU. So if the CPU is 65% or more for 5 minutes, then scale out another VM, bring another VM online or burst another VM, beyond its sort of minimum capacity. We can also see which image it's using, the SKU of the VMs, whether we're standard or premium SSD, and then our monthly savings over on the right-hand side. So it just sort of gives you like a real quick snapshot if you've got auto scaling turned on. Let's jump into some demos. So I'll quickly cover some image management stuff, scripted actions, I guess how to set up host pool auto scaling and storage auto scaling. And then Jared will probably go through some Spargo stuff, which is, I guess, a lot of the monitoring and metrics that we can see what our users are actually doing inside the environment, latency, logon times, that kind of stuff. So hopefully we've got enough time for that. Let me. Cool. Okay, so this is Nerdio deployed in my demo environment. Again, main dashboard here. I'm just going to cover off first thing, image management. No, actually, my VM's still building. We'll come back to that. So workspaces. What is a workspace in AVD? It's just a traditional sort of grouping of, what you want to call your I guess, your application groups that are assigned to a workspace. So if I've only got one here, oh my God, WVD Life. Inside that, I've got one host pool that's a dynamic host pool. It's my Windows 10 host pool 1 multi-session. And then if I click on static host pools, I've also got a Windows 7 host pool that I've just been doing some testing on. But this host pool here is static. It's either on or it's off, and it doesn't rebuild itself. It sort of just sits there until I manually come in and rebuild things. For this demo, I'll just focus on dynamic host pools. So this is our host pool here. We can see I've got 0 hosts on of a total of 1. If I wanted to, I can turn auto scaling on. So to manage auto scaling in Nerdio, hit the little drop down, auto scaling configure. And this is where Nerdio really shines when it comes to some of the advanced auto scaling. So from the top down, we can figure out what we sort of want to call our, AVD machine. So we can go AVD, multi-session, whatever. Nerdio is going to automatically append a dash to the end of the name and then give a random, 4-digit character at the end to uniquely identify each machine. So we just sort of give it the prefix. We choose what image we want to use. Now we can use Azure Marketplace images, but we can use custom images as well. That's the one that I'm currently building at the moment. So if I wanted to, I can use that. VM size, we can say, okay, all the VMs that are built, I want them to be a D4S V5. I want them all to be P10 premium SSDs, but when the VM is stopped, I want it to turn into a standard hard drive. So just by doing this, whenever the VMs scale down and they are powered off, Nerdio will automatically convert the premium disk to a standard hard drive and then save you an extra, I think it's like $11 per VM when it's in a off state per month, that is. So it can do that. The other things down here, reuse host names. So we can re-image and keep the same host name. So if you've got any sort of monitoring in the background that needs to look at host names and ensure that they are the same, you can use that. You can also re-image use hosts. So very similar to like link clones in VMware Horizon, where once a user logs off a traditional one-to-one mapped VM, it will destroy that VM and recreate it from a gold image. So you can do that as well. In a multi-session environment, or obviously wait for all users to log off before it destroys and recreates the VM, but you can choose that option as well. And then in terms of host pool sizing, so like what is an active host? You've got two options here. Either the VM's running or the VM agent is available and phoning home back to the Azure PaaS service. We can turn around and say, okay, we want a minimum of 5 VMs to be pre-provisioned for us. We want, 1 VM or 2 VMs running 24/7, so minimum active host capacity. And then we can say beyond the additional 5 VMs that we've created that are going to be there and powered off, we can say if we start hitting limits, we can burst out an additional 2, 10, 5 VMs, whatever you want beyond this 5 VM host pool capacity. So that's something there if you want to use like Purse VMs. This will only build these VMs if it starts sort of hitting limits and we're going beyond 5 VMs and it needs to create more. It'll then start bursting out and start building the disk and the VM, etc. Then we've got things like scaling logic. So as I mentioned before, the Azure native only does average active sessions, right? So it'll do like, you can only have 5 people per VM or 10 people per VM before it starts scaling up. Well, Nerdio's got all these additional options here. So we can do CPU usage, RAM usage, average active sessions, available sessions, user-driven, right? So user-driven. When all users log off from a particular VM, wait 10 minutes and then power off the host. Go based off CPU. If all of the hosts exceed 65% for 5 minutes, then scale up, give me 2 extra hosts, like turn them on of the original 5. If we start hitting close to 5, then it'll start bursting out VMs if needed. And then we can also say, we don't want to scale in during work hours. We only want to scale in from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day. So it's going to stop or remove hosts only between after hours of our work hours. And then here we can say sort of what scale in aggressiveness we want: high, medium, and low. High basically means I don't care what it is. From 6 p.m. we're going to come down to this minimum number here. We're going to start kicking users off and tell them, yep, we need 2 hosts to save costs. Medium will basically say, okay, we're only going to kick users off if they're disconnected or no active sessions. So that's sort of a little bit more lenient to ensure that our users have got time to log out and sign off their sessions. And then low is, it'll sort of just wait there and only scale in hosts that have 0 users logged into them. So it's more the safest option. But typically I'd recommend sort of the medium workload there, along with some session timeouts and like GPO policies that have applied to sort of, limit how long users can be on a host. And then deactivate drain mode hosts. So if you want to say, I want to turn all session hosts, so of the 5 that I have, I want to turn all of them into drain mode, which is essentially like a maintenance mode. So it's not going to allow new users to log in. It's going to turn them all into maintenance mode except 2, so that if we do have somebody log in after 7 p.m., they're going to get forced to the 2 VMs that are going to be powered on 24/7 rather than one of the other VMs, which are just going to scale in at a later date anyway, based on these parameters here. Another cool feature that it's got is pre-stage hosts. So let's just say, Monday morning, we know that our users all log in at 9 a.m. We've had some complaints where people go to log in and says, oh, there's no sessions available, or they're getting errors for whatever, and the VMs are just not spinning up fast enough. Well, we can say no problem. I know that my users start work at 9 a.m. So I can say at 9 a.m. on a Monday to Friday, based on the schedule, I need 5 servers to be up and running by 9 a.m. So Nerdio will do the calculations and figure out how long it takes to power on each VM and, make sure that they are responding back to the AVD PaaS service. And then once it does that, it'll do its calculation and say, all right, if I need 5 VMs to be ready by 9 a.m., I'm going to start powering them on at 8:25 a.m. So that come 9 a.m., when my users go to log in, there's enough capacity for them to log in. So that's a cool feature there. Messaging is just your standard messaging stuff where, you're telling your users, give them 10, 20, 60 minutes notice before they get logged off. And then finally, the auto heal broken host. So this one's a real awesome one. If you have any issues with any of your VMs, they might come up as unavailable. Maybe there's no heartbeat. Maybe the upgrade failed. All of this stuff, maybe it needs assistance for whatever reason. You can say, if it's got any of these statuses and there are no active sessions, or if it's got active sessions or whatever you choose over here, you can say, okay, I want it to reboot the VM once, check it, reboot the VM again if it's still a problem, check it, and if it still doesn't come back alive, well, then delete it and recreate it based on the image that we have set up here. So it's going to go back to that gold image that we deployed, delete the VM, recreate it, give it the same name because we've got this option turned on here. And then it should start phoning home. So you can choose whatever sort of actions you want it to do. You might even have like a custom script that you want to run, right? Maybe it's some sort of known issue, or maybe you need to, I don't know, start or stop a service. Whatever the case is, you can set up scripted actions to do that. So that's your Nerdio auto scaling. Does anybody have any questions on that before I move on to some of the scripted actions? Cool. All right, so scripted actions in Nerdio. There are 2 different scripted actions that we can choose. So you've got your Windows scripts and you've got your Azure runbooks. Azure runbooks are obviously scripts that run in the Azure environment to be able to do things like, update the AVD agent, unassign a user, like a user from a personal desktop. If we need to shrink the disk, anything sort of outside the Windows environment, you typically do from a Azure runbook. This one here's good. Power on VMs for X number of hours. So for example, I've had a couple of customers that deploy VMs. The environment might not ever scale up to their maximum capacity. So there's always going to be 3 or 4 VMs throughout the month that never really power on. And then when they do power on, they are going to be broken because the AVD agent hasn't had time to update in the background. So this is a real good one where we can say, I want to power on VMs for a couple of hours, once a month, just to make sure that they go phone home, they get the latest AVD agent, and that the next time that they do need to power on, that they are actually available. So, you can come in here, look at the scripts are accessible, and then we can basically use this to schedule it, clone it, run it now on a particular host pool or whatever the case is. So you can assign these actions to host pools to do that. In the Windows script side of things, this is where we can run tools like the virtual desktop optimization. So we can come in here again, look at the script and comment and uncomment anything that we don't want it to do, and then basically deploy this to a host pool. We can also use it to install software like, install Zoom, install MS Teams. This one here is another good one. So the Sophos Server Endpoint Agent. This one basically talks like to the Sophos Central web GUI, and it does a couple of smarts in the backend to talk to the API and make sure that the VMs are registered correctly and whatnot. But you can create whatever custom actions or scripts you need to do in your environment. So you just write like PowerShell code and then pass it through to Nerdio, and Nerdio will handle all the rest to make sure that the script runs. If we wanted to run something on a particular host, so let's just say I've got this host pool here, and I wanted to make sure that, every time the VMs come up, I needed to run a particular script. Well, I can go into VM deployment, come over here and say, okay, I need to run a script when the VM is created. So I can turn this on and say, when the VM is created, I want to enable RDP short path, for example. Done. Or I can say, do it after the VM is joined to the AVD host pool. So once it's, phoning home to whatever, we can run another script. We can also run scripts when it's started. So each time the VM is powered on, each time the VM is stopped, or even when a VM is removed from the host pool. So, if you need to deregister it from any sort of GUIs or agents or anything like that, any consoles that need, the VM to be removed or scripts to run, you can do that here as well. And you can also pass through any AD credentials if it needs to talk to any on-prem services, that kind of stuff. Cool. Any questions on that? Good. Oh, that errored. Damn. Okay, so ignore the error there. It's probably because my accounts run out of credits. But basically, when I talk about desktop images, right, I've created SOEs in the past, sort of traditionally on-prem with SCCM task sequences, with VMware Horizon, sort of snapshots, that kind of stuff. Now, in the past, it's been really easy, and I'll take VMware as an example. Like, you have your vCenter where you basically go in and you build your image, you install all of your agents on there, and then you just right-click and say snapshot, happy days, and then you can go into the Horizon console and say, I want to use this VM to deploy X number of, servers or host pools, whatever the case is. That's been fine. But in Azure, when we're talking Azure VMs, well, we first need to deploy a VM in Azure when you install all the software on there. And if you wanted to capture that and deploy that to a AVD host pool, we typically need to go in there inside the VM, shut it down, take a snapshot of it inside the Azure portal, power the VM back up, go inside, make sure it's all good, run any sort of custom actions, reset any unique identifiers, whatever we need to do, and then run a sysprep tool, have that VM shut down. And then once the VM shut down, go back into the Azure portal, click the capture button, capture it as an image, save it in, the shared image gallery or whatever the case. It's a bit of a tedious task, right? So what Nerdio have actually done is they've got a desktop images thing here. Now, had this had worked, we would see a gold image sitting here, and there'd be a button over here, power on. So I'd hit the power on button, the VM would be powered on, then I can just RDP into it and make whatever changes I want to. Once that's done, I can typically come over here, there'll be a button that says power off and set as image. As soon as I hit that button, what it actually does with the virtual machine is it'll clone the running VM into a temporary VM, so we don't hit any sysprep rearm counts, we don't get any duplicates of anything like that. It'll create a temporary VM, run whatever scripted actions we've assigned to it to clean up any GUIDs or anything like that, or any scripts that we need to run. It will then sysprep, snapshot, and capture that VM as an image and put it in either like as an Azure image or in the Azure Compute Gallery to be able to then use moving forward. Now, if you've got versioning turned on, it will also create another version inside the shared image gallery that we can revert back to if needed for whatever reason, if we run into problems. But it basically removes all that tedious process of us having to go into the Azure portal and, create snapshots and then, go and sysprep the VM, then capture the VM. It's just all automated in the background, which is really awesome. So there's really, it takes, although it's something simple to create an image, it's a real pain to do it in Azure Native because of all those additional steps that we have to do. Unless you've got a script already for it, or unless you're using Nerdio, it can be really time cumbersome. So really annoying, and that's somewhere where Nerdio really shines when it comes to desktop images. I also have another customer who use desktop images where they basically go add a VM from an Azure gallery and they run scripted actions against it. So they'll get a separate clean vanilla OS VM from the Azure Marketplace, with the latest Windows updates patches. And then they run scripted actions against it to go and install Teams, Teams and Office sort of come with it these days, but any other applications that they need for their business as a scripted action that they'll install. They can even do it via SCCM. They have like a task sequence that basically runs on that VM, but they can do that each and every month, destroy and recreate the VM, and Nerdio will handle all of that automation and capturing and versioning of the image for you, which is great. The next thing that I wanted to cover, sorry, I'm just keeping mindful of the time, storage auto scaling. So in my environment, I've got a Azure file storage account that's existent in my tenant. I'm just going to link that to this. So there it is there. So one good thing about Azure Files Premium, this is not AD joined, it's just for this demo, but we can basically do auto scaling stuff, no problem. So with the premium file accounts, they actually allow you to scale up and scale down and give you more IOPS and throughput based on that. It's only available with the sort of the premium account, and you can also do it with Azure NetApp files as well. With this, what we can do is we can actually scale our storage up and down based on, if we're sort of hitting capacity of the storage account, or if we're having any issues in terms of latency, throughput, that kind of thing, we can turn it on. So here, obviously, I'm not using anything because I just created this. But if this was filling up, I mean, we'd get an error here in Nerdio to tell us, hey, this storage account is filling up. But at the same time, what we can do to prevent that is come in to configure some auto scaling options for the actual storage account itself. So we will turn auto scaling on, and then depending on what we want to do, we've got 3 different options around auto scaling. So here we can say we can size or scale up the environment based on the provision size. So we can say, your minimum and your maximum sizes, we want to grow it by X amount of number based on, whatever throughput we want to get here. We can also turn around and say, all right, I want to schedule a quota increase every single Monday because I know that on a Monday I have, X amount of users, or sorry, every day, because I have X amount of users logging in the morning. And if I scale up my storage to like double its capacity, I'm going to get double the throughput, that kind of thing. So if I was to change some of these values around, this should change over here on the right-hand side. So if I go 300%. Is it not doing it? Absolute gig. So depending on what we're scaling up on, right? If we want to scale up, say, an extra 200 gigabytes, we can see Nerdio adjust some of these values to tell us our minimum and maximum throughput, depending on what some of these metrics are that we're putting in here. So if I go, why is it just letting me bloody number? If I crank these numbers up, it sort of gives us a real sort of snapshot as to what our environment can do, and if we're going to meet some of those IOPS for some of the number of users that are going to be logging in. Finally, the last sort of scaling option here is the scaling logic based on server latency, right? So if we know that our server is, like we've got like a 20 millisecond latency, for 5 minutes or longer, we know that our user is going to have some degraded logon performance. So we can say, okay, let's ramp up the storage and bump it up 50 gigabytes to give us an additional throughput during that period of, that sort of slow latency, so that we get over that hurdle, so that we don't allow our users to not be able to log in or may have some slow login times. So that's where a lot of these, I guess, auto scaling features for, the storage component can come into play. And if you're not using things like this, like I recently had a customer where we actually had set up some alerting and metrics for us to let us know that, a storage account was filling up. Unfortunately, we didn't get the notification because there was some changes to the account and whatnot, so we ended up missing it. But Nerdio itself basically scaled up the environment for us because we also had to set it here. So not only did we, we missed the alerts, to proactively let us know, but Nerdio was able to scale up the environment for us when it started hitting the 4 or 5 terabyte capacity, because they had onboarded such a large number of users when they went into lockdown. The storage account FS Logics sort of started filling up quite quickly, and Nerdio sort of handled all of the stuff in the background, so it continued to allow users to log in even during that period there. Any questions on any of that stuff that I've just covered? Anything anyone wants me to sort of just re-explain or dive into? Awesome. Finally, the last thing I just want to cover real quick before I get Jared to jump in and just give you guys a quick talk on Sepago. You've got your assignments here, right? So this is where you basically assign your users to whatever role you want. The roles here, you know, AVD admin, desktop admin. So depending on what sort of role you choose, it sort of tells you in the little sort of eye icon here what users I've got access to. So if I wanted to give people a help desk role, I might assign this to my help desk users. When they log into the, you know, my URL up here and sign in as a help desk user, they probably won't see applications or any of these other stuff. They'll literally just see, you know, user sessions, which is basically this thing here. So if I had users logged in, I'd see who's logged in, what host pool they're on, what host they're actually on, their session status, how long they've been connected, and then come in here, send messages, log users off, that kind of thing. So yeah, depending on sort of how granular you want to get, you've got, you know, sort of all of these different help desk roles, reviewer roles, end user roles that you can assign to your users to control access inside Nerdio so that they don't have to go through the Azure native portal. Jared, I might get you to jump in and just demo the Sepago agent real quick, if you don't mind, mate.
Yeah, no worries. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just flick over to my screen.
Cool.
And just for some clarity as well, obviously, George brought up sort of the architecture slide for you guys. So I guess as part of all of that, so we're just extending, I guess, the native AVD control plane. So, you know, we're not replacing the protocol. You know, we're not releasing a new version of the endpoint client, you know, every month like some of the other vendors are. You're really getting to leverage that entitlement that you've got around AVD through your M365 subscription. So you're sort of not throwing out the baby with the bathwater there around your investment. You're leveraging AVD, but then our product sort of comes along, as George explained, and brings along these enterprise features that you would typically then be looking to those other third-party control planes for. So and that allows us to really, I guess, focus in and hone in on key features. And every month we're kind of releasing more and more capabilities into the product. So, you know, each month there's new things coming along. Obviously, George's demo is a little bit older than mine. I've actually got the latest build. You can see here hybrid host pools. So this is actually where we integrate Azure Stack HCI. Oh, sorry.
Jared, you're not sharing.
I'm not sharing? Oh, I was.
Yeah, I can see him on my side, George.
Yeah. Oh.
Can you? Oh, okay. Then it's just me. Sorry, mate.
You're right. I'll go back to sharing.
Yeah, now it came up.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah. Okay. No, you're right. So yes, you can see these hybrid host pools. This is where we actually now integrate with Azure Stack HCI. So now that Microsoft's obviously brought AVD support for on-prem through Stack HCI, we've extended our feature set to be able to also support that hybrid user experience and use case around AVD and AVD on-prem, which is pretty unique and new to the market. But as George kind of outlined, I was just going to give you guys a quick run through of Sepago as well. So Sepago is obviously a third-party tool that's not provided by Nerdio, but it's a company that we obviously work closely with and effectively OEM. Because most people have probably seen Azure WVD Insights have obviously not changed the name. It's pretty limited around what level of monitoring that you do see within WVD or AVD, if anyone's sort of seen what you get out of the box. So with Sepago, we actually integrate that into the console. This is where you get these three tabs down the bottom. So if you're kind of more used to, I guess, that sort of experience that you would get from, I guess, like a Citrix Director or Monitor type capability as well, where you might be able to sort of see, you know, average latency of a session, how long it took to connect, how long it took to log in. I always pick on our George because we've got a George in our company as well. You can actually see the number of sessions that he's had over a period of time, you know, what the average latency was at a point in time. So, you know, if you've got a pretty large scale environment out there and you're kind of looking for, okay, well, where do I find that information? Because, you know, in my previous deployment or previous environment that I had, I used to be able to get that sort of troubleshooting information. Then potentially extending your platform with Sepago monitoring might be something that you want to look at. Whether you do that separate to Nerdio or whether you do that as part of a deployment of Nerdio, we provide a free trial of Sepago if you do a trial of our product. So just something that comes up fairly frequently when people are like, this is great. Nerdio provides all of these additional management capabilities, but what do you do around monitoring? So this is where we help to plug the gap around monitoring as well. So anything else you wanted me to cover, George, while I've got
I might just
demo
jump
on?
in real quick. Yeah, no, I might just
Go for it,
just
mate.
mention as well those user dashboards there. Like anything that you see here is exportable, right? So you got the little arrow there. If you want to provide reports to management, whatever, you can hit that little drop down arrow, export reports, monthly reports, that kind of thing. This particular dashboard here is around sort of user sessions, so we can see what our users are doing in terms of logging in from where, latency, that kind of stuff. You've also got different dashboards around applications. So if users are complaining of a particular application, every time I run it, it's running slow, that kind of thing. We can actually drill down in these dashboards and then see which application is hogging CPU resources or RAM resources. Maybe we need to separate that application into a different host pool. Maybe we need to look at something else. Maybe we need to increase the size of the VMs, but we can see real in-depth what the users are doing, how they're logging into the environment, what our servers are doing, whether they're constrained by CPU, RAM, that kind of thing. So really, really awesome metrics.
Yeah. Teams is always the hog, top of the list, guys, around application utilization.
I know
Not too
team
many environments, I don't
manages
see.
that, but unfortunately, the accountability will lie with us. So, because they will always have an ICT contact, so they would want one ICT contact. So that's the reason why I'm saying just we would like if it's managed by Demon, well and good. All I have to say is we request Demon to look into it. That's it, right? If there's somebody says something, I've asked Demon to look into it.
Are you saying you'd ask Vadim to look into it? Huh? Oh, maybe it was on the phone. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for that, Jared. All right. So just going back to the deck, anything in the pipeline there, Jared, that you can maybe mention and see, maybe if it'll bring up some sort of upcoming discussion talks or features for some of the guys to ask questions around?
Yeah, look, I think we've just released a new build. So 4.1 has just come out. So that should actually, our release notes are up to date. And I'm pretty sure for most customers that have got the product already, you'll be able to go in and do a deployment to 4.1. So that's where we've brought along the Azure Stack HCI support into the production release. There's also now the Azure API limit booster. So for really large deployments that had potentially thousands of VMs that were going to be hitting limitations around the Azure APIs. There's now support for providing some workarounds around that through multiple client app registrations. So that's something that's helping us help customers deploy their environments at scale. We've got some new features in there, just simple things like adding in additional scheduling. So you can basically, all the stuff that you showed before, George, around doing your image management and release management, doing that all around Patch Tuesday. So we literally have a setting in the product now where it says, schedule this 3 days after Patch Tuesday. So you can basically just set all of your maintenance schedules all around that. There's a few other things around last user login times, around helping you do a little bit more health and hygiene. On the product, there is a future release coming that's going to include a recommendations engine that's going to provide some intelligence and insights around not just, I guess, what you've sort of set up. And obviously, you'll go in and kind of do your own best guess estimate around how you should do your auto scale and the size of your instances and the like, but actually providing some more guided insights around some intelligence we're looking to bring to the product. So that kind of takes what we've developed around our reserved instance analytics that we've brought into the product and kind of turns it on its head and kind of focuses on all elements of your environment as well. That's one of the other ones. I think that's probably about it. I know that there is also, that's probably about it for now, but there is a bunch of other third-party integrations that are coming down the wire as well. Support for the likes of Remo 3 and other, I guess, third-party tools that are sitting in that end user computing space where you might want to do direct integration between Nerdio and a third party product. So we're constantly adding more and more products to stop you from needing to do customization through the REST API whilst it's there and available. And basically anything you can do in the GUI is there in the REST API. We're adding more and more, I guess, out of the box connectors for third party products.
Oh, that's awesome. A lot of the time when we have any sort of issues as well with Nerdio, right? I mean, they're really proactive and really fast on supplying, fixes, updates, patches, that kind of thing, and also any feedback that we have as users in the environment where we find that something might be better or something's been missed. We're happy to I guess get some of that information and channel that through to the Nerdio team or email Nerdio directly, because they really want to make this product shine. It's come a long way, really quickly. It's awesome how quick and advanced it's gotten over the last I'd say the last year, right?
Hey, George,
Yep.
Question for you. Do you remember from the conference, the Nerdio conference, how many updates that Nerdio published last year? Really on the subject, because it is quite impressive how they come across a problem and it's in the next release, and those release cycles with new features and fixes are best I think I've ever seen in the industry.
Yeah. I typically send an email through to the team, and within 2-3 weeks, it's literally out in the next update with some of the suggestions that I've made. So depending on how complex they are, I mean, you generally see them in the next monthly release, which is awesome. If you have any issues or anything like that, or you're looking to do like a trial, like Nerdio obviously offer a trial. CubeSys is a partner. It's a platinum partner with Nerdio. So if you have any questions or issues, or you want to look at doing some sort of deployments with Nerdio, reach out to us. We can help with that. About 95% of the customers that I have all run Nerdio and they love it. There's honestly like 1 or 2 that haven't gone ahead with Nerdio purely because of some internal DevOps team, and they want to sort of run code, and I guess they're a little bit high secure environment, but Nerdio is definitely the way to go over Citrix, VMware, all of that stuff, right? It's native, it uses all the features, it's really intuitive, it's got some awesome stuff.
I might just add a comment to remind people, and I know you covered this off at the beginning, George, but one of the things I like about Nerdio, obviously, I think is a great technical product, and we stepped away from doing that automation at CubeSys and in preference of using Nerdio. I just didn't think it was worthwhile, and the savings you get from the automation sort of pay for itself. But what I really also like about Nerdio is their commercial model, right? So you only pay for a monthly active user. So if a user logs on that month, then tick, you pay for them. If they don't, then you don't pay for it, and that's rolling month on month. And secondly, there's no lock-in contracts, right? So the product can be uninstalled at any point, and as George has explained, architecturally, it doesn't touch any of AVD. It doesn't take over the control plane. It doesn't interfere with what Microsoft provide. It enhances it, right? So you can actually remove Nerdio at any time. So what that tells me is that Nerdio believe in the product that they've got, and that they believe in the value that they're adding, right? So if you can use Nerdio and then take it off again if you don't think it's adding value to your environment, they're super confident about what that product's bringing to you as a customer and how much value it's going to add. So I think when you combine that great technology set, and I do like the engineering and all the automation, but when you combine that with that commercial model, I think it's a no-brainer. And like there's a 30-day trial, so you should, if you haven't used it yet and you've got an AVD environment, absolutely go and play with it, and we can help you do that if you need it. Anything to add to that, Jared?
Thanks for that, Paul. Yeah, like I said, that's definitely one of the differentiators for us, is certainly our licensing model. We firmly believe that people go to cloud because they want that consumption-based approach to products. They don't want to be stuck with a legacy licensing model when they're looking to cloud, because that's not the reason why you're looking to cloud. So we firmly believe in that, and I really don't think that'll ever change for us. And yeah, look, we're up for the Pepsi challenge. If you're on a native AVD environment, we can deploy in parallel. There's really no disruption to your end users. We can effectively import your existing configuration and bring it under Nerdio management. So there's no need to, I guess, start from scratch like you might with some of those other tools if you were going to bring them in. So we can run in parallel. As I said, 30-day free trial. It's pretty easy to do. It just deploys straight from the Azure marketplace. So yeah, if anyone's interested, certainly reach out to the guys from CubeSys, or reach out direct to myself if you've got any other questions. And yeah, certainly around that engineering side of things, guys. Like I've previously worked for the likes of Citrix and other companies, and yeah, look, the turnaround time for Nerdio, if there's something that a customer comes up with and it's a good idea, it's something that we can do and there's enough demand for it, we can turn that around quite easily. If it's like, no, we've got the data, it's here, it's in this workspace, all we need to do is expose it in the GUI, put in a radio button, let's go. You know, I've seen things come in as little as 4 weeks.
We've joked about it internally. Well, honestly, that ability to add new features and listen to where the problems are is phenomenal. We've sort of looked internally, sort of joked with Vadim about adding X, and then next news it's in the product. Right, it's amazing how turn around. So really do pay attention and listen to where the problems are. It's good.
There's about 20 or 30 features that have probably come from us that are just constantly appearing in the portal again. Oh, we spoke about that some time ago, and there it is. So that's awesome. The other thing that I just wanted to call out as well is Nerdio work really closely with the Microsoft team. So a lot of the stuff, and I'll take one as an example, which is Windows 365 or Cloud PC. When that was released by Microsoft, Nerdio had it implemented in their tool on day one. Like that's how quick and close they work with some of these product managers and development managers to get things pushed across. So anything, again, desktop related, right? Like VDI, AVD kind of thing, you will see it in Nerdio. So if you're looking to do Windows 365 integration with Nerdio, it can do it. It can build the environment and manage it, maintain it for you as well. It can also save you costs around licensing and, you know, removing licenses if someone hasn't logged in for X number of days and reassigning them. Like, it's got a whole heap of different automations that it can do.
Yeah, that's probably one of the other differentiators. I don't think there is actually another product in the market that can sit across both AVD and Windows 365. And I know everyone talks about, you know, having a product that provides that single pane of glass, but truly, if you do have an AVD deployment, but, you know, potentially somewhere else inside the business has a corner use case for Windows 365 for a particular use case, and you want to bring all of that management in together under the same team, Nerdio can sit across both of those products, and we can deliver some of the same automation that we do inside AVD and apply that across to Windows 365. So you're not reinventing the wheel around image management. And as George outlined, there's a whole bunch of optimizations around licensing and the like that we can provide around Windows 365. So if that is a use case that's floating around either with your customers or with your own customers as an IT department, or if it's something that you guys are looking at personally, it's definitely worth a look at. So
awesome. Thanks for that, Jared. Does anybody have any questions, I guess, before we wrap up? Awesome.
Well, I think and I know sometimes people get a bit shy on these webinars and keen, but if you do have a question or a question occurs to you later, please flick us a note, send us an email, and we'll answer that. I know Katie will be sending out links to the recording and things, so you could share that with your teammates or whoever might have missed it. And of course, reach out to us if you'd like to have a go in Nerdio. One final request from me would be, we are considering, and George has got the next sessions up there in the coming weeks. We are considering adding some. I know some people were interested in a deeper dive into Windows 365. We're looking to add that on, and there were some suggestions around how we've seen AVD used in a secure desktop mode. So that might be a subject that we can. So we're happy to add some more sessions to this discussion series. If you want to reach out and ask questions or want to dive into something in particular. Then obviously the next session is in a couple of weeks' time, and we're going to look at app attach and MSIX. So much the same way like we discussed in previous sessions, how the profile in AVD now attaches using a virtual disk. We can do pretty much the same thing with applications, which is pretty exciting when you think about how difficult it is to manage those big fat images and the traditional golden image approach, right? So we'll take you through that and how it works and some of the limitations. So app attach is a new technology, so it has a few limitations and gotchas you need to know. So we'll go with those. And then we've got the economic assessment, where we'll help you build a business case internally. So look at the numbers. So costing and understanding the cost of AVD is interesting because it's different to what we're used to with traditional VDI solutions. We've got a cost analysis and chargeback tool. So at CubeSys, we've built a tool that allows you to see how much it costs to run AVD and can give you information on a per user basis, how much each of their sessions have cost. So we'll dive into that in session 7. And then session 8, we'll just come back and go over some technical best practices and sort of sum up, unless of course we extend. So please give us some subjects if you want to dive into, and we'll hold more sessions. With that, I think it's a wrap, George. We're all good.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. I hope that this session's been useful and you guys have learned a thing or two. Again, like Paul said, and Jared, if you guys are interested, reach out, let us know. Happy to answer any questions offline, and hopefully you guys find Nerdio as useful as we do. So thanks for attending.
Thanks. And thanks, Jared, for joining us.
No worries at all. Thanks,
Awesome.
guys.
Thanks,
for having me.
Jared.
Great.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys. Take care.